Thank you very much, Dr. Khondker. This has been a very exciting discussion, and we have a lot of insights not only in terms of governance but also other issues related with labor migration. To wrap up everything that we have talked about this morning, may I call on Dr. Aisul Villar to provide us services.
Thank you, Professor. Thank you very much. Well, I have the hardest job here. Given my allergies, I'm very sorry. I think it's on. Yeah. There's a green light. Try this one. Thank you very much. I'm very sorry for my terrible voice. I have allergies just popped up. Given the time, I have 7 minutes. I have this horrible job of synthesizing. What I will do, I will briefly mention what we discussed so far, just some keywords from our two presenters, and from our discussions, some of the questions that I thought was very interesting. And I will try to add up a little bit of remarks that might stimulate our further questions, further discussions, and maybe might be useful, might be contributive for your further research. I hope that I can manage all these.
In 7 minutes.
In 7 minutes, yes. Anyway, I'll speak fast. First of all, I really enjoyed because it was such an interactive session in only 2 hours. I think we discussed so many things we could already discuss in 2 days, probably. And giving this colorful nature of our group, because we have PhD students, undergrad students from Japan, from different places, from Kazakhstan, PhD students. And we have non-experts like me, we have experts like you all, so we have all different angles, which was actually quite interesting to make this meeting even more meaningful. So I would like to just underline some keywords from, first of all, Professor Tigno's presentation. He briefly underlined the governance of international migration, but especially in the Philippines. First of all, migration challenges like state sovereignty issues, interstate relations, and ad hoc basis on migration policies in the Philippines. And then he mentioned the Filipino love affair in a way, he quote unquote, that why Filipino migration happened and what was the status, what are the status of these migration policies. And then after that he briefly explained very nicely also issues and challenges of migration, especially after the returnees come back, how the remittances are included within the society, whether they are really included into development of local areas, and how government policies and bureaucracy of that complex picture that we have, whether it's really working. Apparently it seems like it's not really working, and what are the typical problems of these issues and challenges. And then he took us to environmental, international environment. There are already international norms, also regional norms. We had a little discussion of ASEAN Charter, and how we can utilize these norms for our national implementation. That was also quite interesting for our further discussion. And then he ended up his presentation with possible ways forward to come over the issues, the problems of migration governance in the Philippines, but also I think it was a very good case study for us to learn for other country implementations. And Khondker Sensei, I really enjoyed your colorful talk. We laughed a lot, which is very good. And migration governance, in the beginning you put your problematic, your big word. You said the harmonizing the interest of labor sending countries with those of labor receiving countries. I think this is very important. This is what we always discuss, because labor migration is not only from a problem of sending country or receiving country. We have to come to a deal between the sending and receiving countries. So it was in a way backbone of your presentation or your talk. And then you had I think it was also quite good introductory presentation for us to see differences, how the cases are taken in different countries. And you had a case study between UAE and Bangladesh. So you mentioned global labor migration and globalization. I think that was also one of the key points, how globalization is important, how globalization is changing the way we think about migration, the way the countries take this migration issue as their policies. And then you came to state, and state, I will come back again later. State was one of the very important topics here, concept here, that I think we need to discuss more on the idea, the meaning of state. Then you talked about functions of state. And then there are these important concepts on migration governance and migration diplomacy that you mentioned very nicely. And then we had commentaries on selectivity in the migration processes, gender issues, because mainly we have female workers here and taking the burden of most of the migration issues and problems. Then we have questions from the audience on regional level. Again, ASEAN, whether it's really working, whether we can really take this as one type of migration policy implementation mechanism and coordination mechanisms in the country and in between the countries. Governance of migration, there are 3 levels, micro, meso, macro, how we can coordinate these governance mechanisms. And the stance of bureaucracy, the complexity of the bureaucracy again was raised as a question. And the returnees, how we can accommodate these returnees and remittances also into when they come to their own home countries. Then relationship between migration and development, whether migration is really something contributing to development in host countries and also in home countries, in sending and receiving countries. I think that's a totally another topic that can be discussed from different angles. And local governments, one of the last questions, local governments, the importance of local governments. That also brings us to the question of states, the national level, central state. Then in general, these are my general comments. Maybe to wrap up our session, I have 2 more minutes, I can see. Well, first of all, you quote one word, one sentence, workers are wanted but not welcome. I think this explains like all the picture that we have. I mean, I'm coming from Turkey, both sending and receiving, well, before sending, now receiving country, maybe both, and workers, they are needed, but they are not welcome. We have this famous Germany issue, like Turkish workers in Germany, still going on. So we have this idea. And I would like everyone to think about this workers not welcome, but wanted within our social transformation. Because what I would like to underline is that there is change. We are just in time of change now. It's not only the latest wave of globalization, but we have, well, I have to say environmental change. I'm coming from the Environment-Related Institute. It is forcing us a lot, actually, and migration, forced migration due to environmental change. And within all this social transformation, think about digital age, think about the high-speed IT technologies, our communication, our transportation, our travels. And within these social transformation, how receiving countries, both state organs, bureaucracy, and people perceive migrants now, today. Oh, I'm sure that it is different than 30 years ago, 10 years ago even. Even within these 2 years because of all these revolutions in the Middle East. And then how sending countries, again, both bureaucracy and people are perceiving, are getting their migrants when they come back to their own countries. So we have this change always. I think when we think about migration, we should take into consideration this change concept. So because we cannot deal with the migration issues within the same way even 5 years ago. Yeah, it's not stated. And then state, coming back to state. Both Tigno Sensei and Khondker Sensei in all the discussions, we talked about state a lot. And within IR, we are within IR discussions, we have this whether we are going towards a stateless society, global society, with globalization, movement of people, individuals having more and more freedom and power now, and directly affecting state affairs. Globalization, impact of globalization and statehood. What are these states? In a way, the classical question, reason d'etat. Whether it is a really Leviathan, whether it is still there, because especially your discussions, your presentations, I sense that you see state more like close to the Leviathan image. But within our discussions, we were moving the discussion of state or the state position towards more quite translucent identity or agency that we can demand more, but we can also expect, we can also see the state to be defined in a little bit more interactive way. So what should we expect from state? But at the same time, what state should expect from us? That's one thing I was thinking about the position of state. And we have concepts, migration management, governance of migration, migration diplomacy, policy coordination. These were the key concepts we underlined a lot. And my two last points. One point is migration governance. I think I have to say this again. This is our main title today. National, international, and like ASEAN, regional levels, norms, regulations, and there are similarities and differences, as you mentioned, Tigno Sensei, and how we can digest these norms, regulations, both at national level, regional level, and international level, and come up with new governance mechanisms. Then my last point, way to go from now on. What is data? What we also both underlined, data. There is still no clear, neat, analyzed, categorized data. How many Filipinos, how many Turkish, how many Bangladeshis moving, how much they are bringing back, how those remittances are really put into development, real development in local areas or in the cities in these countries. So data is very important. From now on, we can put more focus on data. And one thing is that there's already a trend that not only governments and academic communities, but also NGOs are also in the process. So we call this transdisciplinary perspective approaches. And Khondker stated that labor unions should also be included. And I was asking the question, how about the private sector, the companies, small companies, directly dealing with the migration issues, and also big MNCs to be included within this transdisciplinary perspective. And my last word is interdisciplinary. I think you also mentioned that one. For us, actually, our homework maybe, doing the migration work, migration research, not only from our own point of views, with our own original fields, but also trying to do it with interdisciplinary perspective, and maybe not borrowing the concepts from each other. No, I just like your statement actually, but having those concepts as our own concepts and start from the very beginning, from scratch, to discuss the issues all together around the same table. Thank you very much, and I think this ends my
synthesis to end this morning's session. But before closing this session, on behalf of the two organizers of this forum, the Afrasia Research Center of Ryukoku University and the UP Third World Studies Center, would like to thank our role players, our presenters, our commentators, the audience for the interaction that we had for barely maybe 3 hours. We had a lot of discussions, and it also shows the very nature of our topic, which is migration and governance, that we're dealing with many things, both different levels of governance, local, national, and global governance of migration, and at the same time we're involving a lot of actors, government, academics, the private sector, and NGOs and labor unions. And at the same time, I would like to acknowledge perhaps the trust given by the Afrasia Research Center for the Third World Studies Center to organize and to host this morning's forum. And we wish our foreign colleagues well with the rest of your activities, and we hope that we can see each other again, collaborate both formally and informally, research-wise, but at the same time the personal networks. And we hope that you will find the rest of the schedule set out for you not only tasking but also rewarding. I think tomorrow you will end your session with a tour from the exposure trip. You will have some sightseeing, and we wish you well and see you again. Thank you.